Hello and welcome to the Andes Public Library Local Author Book Talk Series. I'm Pamela Westfinkel, the director here, and today I'm so excited to have Beatriz Schiller, a local, now at least a local, we can call her our own, a photographer and journalist, and she has come out with a book called Beyond the Flag, Iconographies of Patriotism. Beatriz Schiller has a really interesting history, and we're really excited about taking a look at this very thought-provoking book. And so Beatriz, I wanted you to talk about your background as a foreign correspondent and photojournalist, your immigration to this country, and what brought you to put this book together.
Okay, so I came to this country, I was born in Brazil. I lived in France. I got out of Brazil at 20, and I lived in France, then I lived in Uruguay, lived in Italy, and then I came to this country in December 1969 with my 3 small children and a husband who was going to work at the United Nations, so I came with a diplomatic passport. And I started freelancing immediately, photographing and freelancing. And my first published story in this country, I titled 1001 Nights in 1 Week. And I illustrated with the skyline of Manhattan, and I collated in front a man in a flying carpet, and I counted all the theaters, all the seats, all the plays, all the museums, and everything that was taking place, the events and the talks, and, I said in this 1 week in New York City, more things happened than in the whole life of most cities in the world. And so the abundance of all things caught my eye and my attention in that story. And this same, it was a abundance in cultural, educational fields, and the same abundance that I started to see as I started traveling in the country and covering things for the daily paper I worked for, was the abundance of signals, icons, and symbols of patriotism. And that's the same abundance that caught my eye and made me start photographing that in 1972, and from then to 82. This is a historical book from a decade, approximately. So that's about it.
Very nice. And there was something about, you told me St. John the Divine had asked you to do a show, and that really was the precursor to you thinking about putting this together as a book.
Exactly. So when I decided, in 73, in the beginning, that I didn't want to go back to my country of origin, I said to the newspaper, I'm going to stay. And at that point, I was invited to make a photo show in the Museum of the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. And they said, you're free to choose the theme you want to show from all your going arounds and all that. And something that signifies the United States, a linking point between South and North and East and West. And I looked at all my portfolios, of photos, and the flag appeared in almost all places and events, and I said, this is it. That's what makes America be linked, from here to there. And so I made the show with Beyond the Flag, the Iconographies of Patriotism, and this is what became now finally a book,
Very nice. It must have been very exciting to see it in print finally after all these years.
I know, yes.
Wonderful.
Yes,
All
it was.
I'm going to show this image. We're just actually, I went through the book and picked out some of my favorite images and some images that I thought might have gone along with some of the questions that I had. So you say in your foreword of the book that Americans you interviewed, ranging from ages 9 to 90, you discovered that people's feelings, fervor, cynicism, jokes, denials, and rationalisms about patriotism are more diversified than the use of the icons would suggest. Did you identify any unifying ties or any commonalities that people share despite the diversified variety of perspectives?
Well, what I feel is that the flag, the flags, the eagles, the symbols, generally speaking, they don't just happen, they are, and at the very end, before I made the show, I decided to see where the flags were fabricated. So I went to Valley Forge Flag Factory. They had their offices in Pennsylvania, and I went to Annan Flag Makers as well. Both of these companies were founded by families in the 1800s, and they keep on doing, and that is like now 150 million flags sold each year, according to the Flag Manufacturers Association of America. So this is after seeing all these appearances of flags in different locations and different events. I went to see how does it happen, and that's the photograph of the cover. Mm-hmm. That's a woman doing the flags that are going to go to commerce, to business, to families, etc.
But there was, as you were interviewing people, did you find that any one of them had a common thread about their idea about the flag and what that meant to them? Or did you really find that there are as many different ideas about the flag as there are different types of Americans?
Well, I think that the flag is kind of, some people, when they complain about the mistakes or what could be better in their lives or in their professions or in the country, they can use the flag to say, oh, it's not corresponding to what or they cannot say, I don't hang the flag out because I feel that, like a farmer who said, they put a lot of limitations on us, but then they import meat from abroad that does all the things that are forbidden to us. And so I don't place the flag outside of my house anymore until that changes. This whole complication between the national and the international. But I do feel people they relate to the flag. The flag is their country. That's where they come from, And they start as children, then they live with it to protests and to celebrations, and then, they use it in circumstances like, in the cemetery you see flags, so it's your country. It's just means that you belong to that country. That's about it,
Yeah, I'll get some more questions about that. But one more from this part. In the beginning of the book, there's a really thought-provoking interview with Noam Chomsky, MIT professor, dated back into 1982. I'm just curious, how did you come to know Mr. Chomsky?
Oh, okay. Because I worked for a daily paper, it was a daily paper from Brazil, and I was their foreign correspondent here. At the very end, when I was finishing, because I wasn't going to return, a newspaper which was left-oriented from Brazil asked me to interview Chomsky. Chomsky was then, the New York Times didn't publish him. Now, actually, he was published by the New Yorker, and he was talking about the elections, the new elections. But in the old days, he was this intellectual, very respected by people who were against the Vietnam War, about young people who wanted change and all that. And this left-wing newspaper asked me to do an interview. So I called MIT, where he was a teacher of linguistics, and I asked if he would grant me an interview. And I was going to sign my name differently, like an invented pen name. Maria Miller was the name I used, because the newspaper who was my boss said, we don't want you to do the story with the same name, Yeah. So that's what I did. I went and I spent like 3 hours with him, and I interviewed him for the paper, for the magazine called Movimento was the name, and I interviewed him for the portfolio that I was preparing for the show.
Nice.
you know.
Nice.
And he was absolutely adorable and very precise and very analytical. This man is linguistics, no?
Yeah.
So words have meanings.
And his interview, I mean, that is just such a great addition to the book, and it really lends a lot, I think, to, you know, getting your mind prepared to look at these images and read the quotes and start to broaden your thinking about how we all relate to this thing we call the flag, or the red, white, and blue, and all that. So wonderful. Let me go to the next slide. I wanted to show this one. Some young gentlemen in a parade, it looks like. And I wanted to ask, do you think the experience you had exploring American patriotism is representative of Chomsky's statement that patriotism is just one particular form of group loyalty which happens to be associated with the nation state?
Oh, okay. That is in Chomsky always, you know, he sees one side and he sees the other side. He feels like nation states in this very complex world where there is the national and the international, you know, nation states can be so self-serving that they lose sensitivity towards the needs of other countries. Other countries are countries too, and they have ambitions. They want to raise their swords, their economies, and all that. But on the other token, you know, he feels that in the name of patriotism, it can go right, like a group solidarity, people who belong to the same place, they eat similarly, they hear the same jokes, they speak the same language, but there is also the possibility of going wrong, going into jingoisms, propaganda, and that can be used both commercially and politically. And in the McCarthy times, which I think is the most incredible mistake, you know, people were judged if you criticized, or if you had a different point of view, you were called an un-American. They created an un-American committee, and they were getting people out of their jobs because they didn't deserve to have a job and all that. And that's the kind of thing Chomsky was, you know, that is the natural loving thing, and that is the possibility of jingoism and mistaken use,
yes,
you know.
We're going to talk more in a few minutes about that term un-American and how that came about, what that means. But let's go down to this next young gentleman. I think I remember kids in elementary school wearing this exact sweatshirt, if I remember. He says, "Don't mess with the U.S." So do you feel that the quote-unquote privileged groups, as Chomsky calls them, uses red, white, and blue flag iconography to mobilize the population to things like war, or for a quote-unquote noble and deeply significant cause? Or do you think that it's more for like identity, just to claim that this is our symbol, we are American?
Well, I feel, speaking about Chomsky, no, I agree with him that there is a love of country that takes that patriotic turn, you know. There are many successes in the country that you can celebrate. I'm talking about it, not Chomsky, no. Americans are proud of achievements. For example, you know, one of the ways a citizen was respected in old towns around here, Delaware County, etc., was how many books he picked at the local library and how much he read. I mean, in Cooperstown, they have examples of that. Readers were respected, they ascended socially, they were more useful to society if they knew more things. Also, the United States made a point to create printing presses early in this country. So this is education, and this is a good thing. Am I answering your question, or am I getting off?
Maybe a little bit off. I think it's more about is the flag, I guess maybe, you know, what the underlying question that gets brought up are the privileged groups, you know, those maybe who have a lot of wealth in this country. And of course, this may have changed over the last 50 years or 60 years as well. But do you think that our government and the wealthy, privileged few tend to use American patriotism and symbols like the flag as a way to mobilize people for things like war or to satisfy this noble cause that they have, versus the flag just representing identity as an American?
I think that is both, you know. I think certainly, you know, the very wealthy who depends on getting people to go their way, you know, whatever they are doing, be it selling merchandise or selling behavior or selling wars or selling agreements and peace, they do use it, you know, when people with the world of the internet and all that, they are getting more and more susceptible to being manipulated, you know. That is like a continuous invasion of everything. And the concentration of money also, the billionaires, you know, there is like, I don't know how many people have $40 billion, you know. So this is, they have a facility to inject money in causes they want, and they have a facility of spreading via artificial intelligence or whatever, or big techs or whatever. They can do more than previously when you bought your copy of your local paper or national paper. It's a different world. Yes, I think the privileged have a lot of privileges.
Yeah,
and they use it.
I'm going to go down to this. Wow.
That is also the people who donate money, and you know, that's something which is a tradition in this country. Nevertheless, I also heard that sometimes if instead of making donations and getting tax breaks, these very wealthy pay their taxes, they would give more money to society than they give now.
Yes, definitely.
So that is things are always complex, you know?
Definitely. This is a really powerful photo. This is of the World Trade Center back in 1975, and the picture looks like it was taken from across, maybe even Liberty Island or somewhere close to there. Do you remember where you were when you took this picture?
Yes, I do. I do remember exactly the circumstance. It was the bicentennial. There was a celebration, and my newspaper asked me to go around by boat and by subway and by car and go to different places to photograph, you know, the going celebrations. And everything was extremely, what can I say, jubilation and parties and etc. And then suddenly from New Jersey, I saw, when I got out of the car in one of my stops, a striking counterpoint to that climate of celebration, and it was a very maltreated pier in the foreground. There was everything kind of old and rot, and there was an old boat upside down, and then there was a ragged flag. I don't know who did it, who put it there or whatever, but that's exactly what I found, and I clicked. And in the background, there was the financial center, you know. There was the Twin Towers, and there was all the downtown where the money, banks and all that happens. And then when I prepared to do the show at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, they told me, do a poster. And I went to a man called Sidney Rappaport, a great printer, you know, a man who did a fantastic job, quality and all that. And going through the photos with me, he said, there is no doubt about it. That's the image. And this was in 75, an image nobody could imagine the future, you know. So it was just, he said to me, it means because a ragged flag evokes a war, you know, somehow. And the fact that there is this ragged flag in front on destruction and all that, and in the back there is the financial center, evokes the possibility of the U.S. going to war to defend its financial interests. So that's, but the photo was taken, I found it, you know,
Yeah.
from New Jersey.
when you look at this photo now versus when you first took it, has your thoughts about the photo changed? Does that photo symbolize something different for you now after, how long are we now? Almost 20 years or 10 years after 9/11.
Well,
Or no, 20 years. Oh my God. 20 years.
Because, I've seen this photo so many times, I'm so used to it, but it does mean after they destroyed the towers, it does mean that whatever was there, some tragedy, an attack happened, and that's about it, Yeah, but the image preceded the fact,
Yes, definitely, definitely. Wow. And then opposite that photo, you have a quote from philosopher, poet, composer John Cage, who claims that the American government has one problem. It's married to business. And I think we talked about this a little bit already. While so many live in such desperation for survival and disparity between the haves and the have-nots, do you feel that the flag in this photo is representative of that disparity? And I think you mentioned you touched on that.
Let me get to that one. The boys, where is...
And while you're looking that up, I'm just going to make
John
sure that...
Cage.
John Cage, yeah.
Oh, okay, it's on the same page. 47, hold on. Well, should I keep on talking or wait for you?
I think, we touched upon that. You mentioned that this was like a precursor to a financial war almost, or that America was looking at its
I do believe that John Cage was this philosopher, experimental composer, a good, and it is the good distribution of wealth is common sense. It's good, when some people have more than they can ever use or whatever, and some people struggle so much to have some, it imbalances the whole thing, because if you're selling something, you need the buyer for the product you're selling, and also the dignity of people. And I think the strength of a country is also based on a good middle class, and also money that is amassed for some absurds, including the internationalism, where a lot of the big companies, multinational, they lend their money wherever they are doing their factories, and they have a cheaper labor, and therefore somebody in their own country, where the owners of the factories are going to be without jobs, and it imbalances the whole thing. And I do feel, in terms of international, that countries should make friends with other countries and not make wars.
Yeah, really try to
it's better for everybody.
Do to work together a little bit more.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Switch to this photo now. And in the Chomsky interview, he says that we are a country of immigrants and we have no unifying religion, so Americanism became a doctrine. This then led to the ability to call some, as we mentioned before, un-American. What does the term un-American mean to you, and do you feel that has changed in the last 20 years, the last 50 years, and even the last 70 years, going back to McCarthyism?
Well, thank God, people don't use that term anymore. People may say people are not thinking right, that people may feel superior to the other because you think one way and the other one is less educated or whatever, the convictions. But the term disappeared. I don't hear anybody being called un-American or losing their jobs for being un-American. Thank God it's gone, right? I think so. But I think that is, in terms of the immigrants, that are next to this photograph, that is this quote by Henry Cabot Lodge, also to the Congress in 1915. The flag belongs as much to the man who was naturalized yesterday as to the man whose family has been here for many generations. And it is true. I mean, I remember one woman who worked for me, and she was also from Brazil, but American citizen, and she had a grandson who decided to go to war with the American army. And I said, it was the Iraq war, and I said, Elizabeth, why are you proud? Because he's going to war. You know, this is going to die. He's going to kill people. He may come home crazy and you'll be afraid of him and all that. She said, oh, I'm proud because he's not going to go to the army of a country that has old tanks and old rifles, and they cannot even do right what they want to do. And in the US they will have better equipment, they will be better trained and so forth. So that's a vision of somebody. It's not my vision, but it's her vision. But it's being proud of what America, this is a militaristic way of thinking from her, but you know, for me, an American, by the way, means the 50s, which is before my time. I arrived in 1969, December 69, okay? And I feel an American was used politically. It was not religious, so it's not a doctrine of religious anything, it's political, you know, to make people conform to a certain way of being. That I feel in the 50s they went, I don't like what happened so much, you know.
Yeah, and let's hope we don't have a return.
Let's hope we never have a return of that. Exactly.
All right, I'm going to move on to this next image.
And if we want to go back, you know, I think on the other token, you know, this immigrants may arrive and feel proud and be accepted, but that is discrimination. And I think there was always discrimination against the layers of immigrants that arrived. You know, like when the Irish arrived, they were seen as lesser than the previous ones. And then the Italians arrived and they were seen, and some people say you have to graduate and to be accepted on the same level. And that can also be very tough, you know, and very unfair, you know.
Yeah.
So discriminations are bad.
Yeah, for the melting pot, you know, for a country made out of immigrants and based upon immigrants, we sure do put a lot of homogenizing into the system, don't we? We try to do that assimilation, you know.
Exactly,
where,
yes.
We want them to assimilate to whatever this means to be American versus un-American.
Yes, it should be American, it should be human beings, it should be, and I don't like divisions, you know, not even divisions between sexes and genders. We are human beings and we want the best for all of us, you know.
Definitely, awesome. So in this picture I've got a question. You have numerous quotes from numerous sources, including Vietnam, Korea, and World War II veterans, that all seem to give the same message that Benjamin Franklin had said: there never was a good war or a bad peace. Many mention that Americans have never really experienced war on our soil, except for 9/11 and the Pearl Harbor bombing, but nothing like the destruction of entire cities, the occupations, and the horrors of experiencing war firsthand. Do you think that our concept of patriotism would change if we were the ones invaded and thrown out of our homes and occupied and that type of thing?
Okay, well, I do feel that many immigrants in this country came from countries that had suffered wars, bombardments, loss of family or loss of money, poverty, etc., etc., you know. They either felt it or they heard it from their parents, their grandparents, etc. Actually, I have an example recently of doing work at home, and the crew that was working was all friendly and joyful, and there was an electrician who yelled with everybody. And one day I said, "Why are you yelling? You seem like why are very strange?" And he said, "Because I'm from Kosovo, and if you came from the country where I came from and you saw the horrors I saw, you would be yelling as well." And so, you know, the thing is that a lot of people came to this country with the experience of war, okay? Then maybe they become like, let's defend ourselves, let's do that, let's do war to others before they attack us. And I don't like that kind of extreme, let's defend ourselves by killing others. Because I feel that there is never good wars and never bad peaces.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
You agree with that? Yeah, I think I agree with Benjamin Franklin too.
I agree with Benjamin Franklin. I think the best is peace. But I think if this country was seriously attacked and destroyed and the economy goes to hell and people have diseases and all that, everything would change.
Yeah.
But in a nuclear world, which is the world we live in, my feeling is that if there is a serious war, it's the end of the planet, So
we better get our stuff together.
We better get our stuff together. Respect each other, everybody around the world.
Definitely.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to move on to the financial district or downtown here. You have a quote from Joan Hopkinson Elbers, a descendant of one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. She mentions that she was brought up to believe the rich should be rich and the poor should be poor, but it's not good to amass wealth and not care about others and share that wealth with those less fortunate. We've already talked a little bit about this, but can you tell us a little bit about her and your thoughts about how that has changed or shifted in the last 50 years?
Okay, let me tell you. She was my mother-in-law, okay? A lovely woman who grew up in a family of comfort and wealth, and she realized that she married a Dutchman. She went to live in Europe, and some people in her social group were saying, how can you go away? You don't have the social Philadelphia place to know who's who. And she said, who is good and who is not good. People are who they are and not what their social status say they should be. And she said, how wrong, to feel that you give what you don't need, a little bit of that to somebody, instead of being a part of a group of people from different kind of pockets and backgrounds and thoughts. And her children, actually, two of her children became very seriously involved with a movement from the early 60s called Back to Earth, when they decided to live in communities. They were hippies, okay? And they lived in communities, and they all planted together, and they ate the same food, and they did all that. And she said, well, this is a new vision for the future, and let's believe that people are going to be equal between themselves. Doesn't matter, if you come from a little house or from a mansion or something. We are people passing through this earth. We are born, then we die, and we better be good to each other,
Very good. Awesome. And did they stay, just out of curiosity, did they stay living in the community then?
Well, things changed a little bit, but everybody got married, everybody had children, and they still, I have one brother-in-law who still lives in a community, and his son became a baker, working from the barn of the family compound, and but the daughters, one went to live in California, married a surgeon, and the other one lives in Washington, D.C., because people move.
Yeah.
The only people who don't move are trees. They are born with roots, and they stay there. Our roots are moving roots.
Definitely, definitely. All right, so I love this picture. In one of our earlier conversations, you told me that as someone who grew up elsewhere and became an American, that you felt that Americans take a lot for granted, the basic rights that people in other countries don't have. Can you talk about some of those?
Yes, let me go to that image. Okay. Yes, okay. Well, I feel that Let me go to page 125. Yeah. Uh, I think a lot of things that are taken for granted in this country, mainly the people who didn't build the country, the people who built this country, I mean, in the village here, you know, they were given one of these saws that one goes up and the other goes down, and they have to cut the tree, and they have to do the house and all that. We live in a time of comfort, no matter how much we complain, and young people take it for granted. It's not as good as it was 20 years ago or 30 years ago, etc. But here people have what they don't have in other countries, like clean water and sewage, okay? That's a basic right people should have all over the world. But because it's a third world country, they don't have money. And also the third world country, the same as here, there is the privileged and there is the rest. So those people on the top of money and power, because they seem to come together, you know, and the people from that level in one country and on the other seem to talk to each other, but they don't seem to talk about the whole group like they should, you know. So clean water in the U.S. and sewage in the U.S. is all over the place. There is electricity all over the place, you know. This doesn't happen in other countries, you know. There is no roads, so people have to fight over. There is wars even in some African villages because of water, you know. There is a lack of water if you go to the other place, the other guy, and it's not the fault necessarily of those populations. It's the fault of a conjuncture, where sometimes the elites, let's put it that way, or the privilege of those countries talk to the elites of the other country, and they do things that are not necessarily for the benefit of all, you know. And so roads, when I see the roads here going from Mendes to Delhi or from anywhere, they are wonderful, you know. So there is enough money for people to get their truck and go to their work and come home and this and that, and that's something that doesn't exist in other countries. Actually, I had a friend, the first time I came to the US, I was 16, and I have a friend who said, oh, there are people who criticize the US all the time, and there is things to criticize, of course, but you know, there is one thing that you have to praise. Wherever you stop for a gasoline or for going to the restroom, you can flush the toilet and it works. This is a rare thing in a lot of the poorest, the less wealthy countries in the world. This is something that people don't even notice because they haven't been in the places where people suffer, you know, because lack of water brings disease, brings this, brings that.
Hold on to that, then I'm going to check our camera, make sure that we're not running out of memory. Nope, it's still rolling. Okay, good. So, what about, so there's,
so just to finish on what we were talking, I think the first world, the second world, the third world should give hands to each other to create one world that is good for everybody. That's about it.
What about our Bill of Rights? You know, that there are things in this country, not those physical things, and obviously, you know, when I'm a teacher, so coming from an educational perspective, there's something we learn about in school called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, so
what is it called?
It's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So when you have a lot of people that are struggling financially, that don't have their basic needs being met, whether that be food or clean water or whatever, it's very difficult for them to be part of maybe a civic society, or maybe becoming, you know, thinking about things like freedom of speech and maintaining democracy and reading and philosophical thought. Those things are really sort of on the back burner for somebody who's really struggling in life and just barely able to survive. But as we move up that ladder, which many Americans do live on those higher levels, even in middle class and upper poverty level, we still have to maintain a measure of comfort, compared to other countries. So we become concerned with things like our gun rights and our civil rights and our freedom of speech and our freedom of press. How are these things different, and how do you think Americans might take the Bill of Rights type rights for granted?
Well, I feel that the Bill of Rights is an extremely important. It's one of the successes of the U.S. It's not only that the U.S. had, they learned that they have to build their house. They learned that they have to work. The children help the mother. They pick up the garbage. They sell newspaper, whatever. But also, there was the encouragement of education. There was also the inventors, like Benjamin Franklin, who saw the lightning rod and whatever, and Thomas Edison, Graham Bell. There was all these people. The Bill of Rights has to be slightly changed as time goes by, because it was written, but it's a marvelous instrument.
Mm-hmm.
It's an instrument that guarantees the right of speech, the right to assemble, the right of all the 10 amendments of the Constitution. So this is, how can it change? What's your question about?
Oh, just how do Americans take that for granted? And I guess maybe we can move on, because I have another question kind of along those lines coming up really soon. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we have, actually it's the next question. So there's some great quotes from Annette Rubinstein, who grew up in a socialist country, came to America, was blackballed by McCarthyism for belonging to the Communist Party, left the U.S. to teach English literature in other socialist countries, and then came back to the U.S. because of our Bill of Rights and the democratic traditions of civil liberties. She suggested a democratic socialism with both civil rights and production tools ownership. Do you agree with her? Or does it matter if you agree with her?
Well, to tell you the truth, I respect her thinking.
Uh-huh.
And including Annette Rubinstein told me a wonderful story. She was from a left-leaning, almost communist or whatever, Jewish family from New York City. And she remembers when the Second World War started, that she went with her mother to the butcher store, and the young boy who helped cut the meat came in all dressed in a uniform. And the butcher asked him, "Why are you dressed like that?" He said, "I'm going to war. I enlisted." And the man said, and her mother, Annette Rubinstein's mother, asked the kid, "Why did you enlist?" And he says, "I'm going to save the wealth and the well-being of Americans." And she said, "But why are you doing that? You're a poor kid, you don't live well." And then she asked the owner of the butcher shop, "And what about your kids? Are they going to war?" He said, "No, they are staying home to take care of business."
Yeah.
So, I have no prediction of what's going to happen in the future in the world, but I do feel that it's not fair, and it's not practical, it's not commonsensical, it applies not only to the population of one country, but all countries. All the Europeans who entered into Africa and made them colonies and all that, and they thought they were bringing civilization, but they were really exploiting cheap work, to make more profits, and they were not even educated, the people. It should apply, I think, in our world, our time, maybe there should be an international Bill of Rights, It would avoid a lot of complications,
Yeah, definitely.
But I don't know if, I'm not against the government having businesses, I think, for instance, there should be a plan of health that the government could be the international, like they have in Germany, like they have in Portugal, you know, the universal, like they have in England.
Right.
I mean, in this pandemic, when we couldn't buy masks, we couldn't buy liquid to clean the hands. I was taking a shower one day, and I look up, and my transparent plastic curtain had written, "Done in China," you know. And I say, it's not China's fault. It's because why isn't it done all over the place, you know? So, and why isn't there a governmental center in this moment? I wish all the scientists of the world would work together to find a cure for this pandemic. I mean, with all the heads together, but I wonder if, you know, the different private big pharma, each one wants to hit the jackpot, you know. And so if the Russians are doing something, and the Chinese and the Americans and the Germans and the Brazilians and everybody, the scientists maybe could quicker, maybe, hopefully, take care of the health of people.
So again, we need more collaboration. We need more unity, right? That's what we need.
And we do, yes, we do.
We do. So you also have some quotes from Edward Bernays, known as the father of public relations and author of the book Engineering of Consent, who said that the public schools could do a much better job about educating young people about their rights and how to participate more in their government, which is one of the most patriotic things someone can do. What are some ways you think we might be able to manifest this kind of patriotism? So we're looking at the kids saying the Pledge of Allegiance, you know, which we did, you know, everybody got up and said the Pledge of Allegiance. And I think so many people just kind of say it as if it's rote, you know, they don't really put a lot of meaning into it.
Because when they are kids, they don't know, you
right.
know.
And I can say from growing up in a small rural town in the Midwest that, you know, beyond the Pledge of Allegiance, we didn't get a lot of education about how to become good patriotic citizens. There were two main things that they suggested. You should go serve your country, especially if you don't have money for college. They'll give you money, so go serve your country. And and I can't remember what the other one was I was going to say. But I did have the experience of being selected. So each school in the United States, I think most states have this, they have a boys' state and a girls' state. So some of the best students from each school are selected. And we get sent to enact an actual mock government, a state government. So you have your local, you have your city, you have your town, you have your county, and then, you know, it moves all the way up to your House of Representatives.
Wow, that's wonderful.
And it was an eye-opening experience. And I ended up in the House of Representatives. I ran for assistant governor. Of course, I didn't get that, but that was a big popularity contest and a big mudslinging show, and we had to campaign and be elected. But what I found was that my eyes were open to how difficult the job of our representatives really is, and how so many different factions come in, and you have all these different special interests and all of these people trying to all work together to make laws and to govern our nation and make good decisions for everyone. And
yes.
I wish, after having that experience, that they would teach us more, like in a civics class in school, that they would teach us, how do you write your representatives? How do you write letters, and how do you lobby for, you know, help with your local farmers? These are things that our students are entirely unprepared to do, but yet these are the rights that we have.
But, you know, that's the question. Why are they unprepared? Because they should be encouraged to ask questions, you know. That starts from, I don't know, from home sometimes, you know, like go to your bedroom because you said something that we don't say that in this home, and, or you have a different point of view from the rest of your siblings or whatever, and they don't talk with you because they disapprove of you. diversity of opinion should be encouraged, you
Yeah.
know. And I don't know how that should be done, but I think it. I actually, some of my heroes are self-taught people. You know, like one of them is Benjamin Franklin. The other one, Thomas, what's his name now? The painting of the, Jesus, now I got a blank. but but I feel that when you're learning by yourself, you're not put in a box like universities put you in a box and colleges and schools, and, because you have to think out of the box, you know, in order to reach some other questions, you know. Otherwise, you learn by heart, you know, and you get a good, no, you know, you're the first in your class because you know everything, but that's not exactly what opens up for new thoughts,
Right.
you
Right.
know. And new thought is expensive. You see, people lose their jobs because they don't think like everybody else or whatever. But
I mean, the reality
how
is,
to get children? Well, Edward Bernays was a man in this country who, through public relations and all that, he also wrote another book called Propaganda. Okay, is how to sell your product, and your product can be ideological or whatever. And that book ended up in the bedside table of Goebbels in Nazi Germany. Okay, in this country, he was called by the people who were selling tobacco, cigarettes, saying we need to sell more. And women don't smoke, so let's start a big campaign. You know, like there's the Marlboro man, he's a macho man because he smokes a cigarette. And so you put a woman, you know, I'm powerful, I'm woman, and I smoke. You know, it's the not the Marlboro woman, but it's the free woman. It was just an excuse to sell more. Well, years later it proved that cigarettes are not good for your lungs, for men and women, but you know, propaganda, and we believe we can think freely. We don't even know how much we are influenced.
Yes, absolutely. So I
You
know.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so what can I say? His idea is that people in this country he told me to read Babbitt, you know, by Sinclair Lewis, because it's a story of a group of people in the time of Prohibition who all pretend they don't drink. And they do drink. They drink. I'm sorry, okay? They drink hiding. And more transparency, more truth, less manipulation of facts.
Definitely, definitely. All right, so we're coming down to the wire. I think it's really, we're just going to come down to this one. I love this photo. I used to go to a lot of art shows as a child. So, in the end, you know, you've had a lot of experiences, you've met a lot of people over the years with different points of view. What do you think, what do you hope that the readers of your book are going to come away with?
I don't know. Actually, I have some quotes by some people, some comments. I think it generally there has been a good answer, you know, good reaction to the book. People, and I have a quote that I love by Mary Reynics. She's the executive editor of the Random House publishing book, and she says, in Beyond the Flag, Beatriz Schiller showcases range and depth.
Okay, keep going.
Of the flag's power within the American landscape. Her piercing photographs investigate our country's relationship with this complicated symbol, while at the same time offering a nuanced view of how its citizens' lives are intertwined and infused with it. Beyond the flag is a powerful portrait of a nation, its people, and its values. That's one answer. That's what she had. And then there is Eugene Kirkham, who is the owner of a winery in Napa Valley, California, and a Harvard University English major, who had I started to live through Beyond the Flag by Beatriz Schiller, and very soon could not put it down. It is great work. I'm looking forward to studying each page. And of course, and there is Karen Malpides. She's a playwright and co-founder of Theatre 3 Collaborative in New York City, and she's a teacher of theater at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. And she's also a feminist, editor of Women on Theater, Compassion and Hope. Okay, and she says that Beatriz Schiller, brilliant photographer of the arts, published a brilliant book of important political photographs and interviews, Beyond the Flag, a book of her photos and interviews that a journalist who came from Brazil, from the 80s, has relevance for where we are today as a nation divided. It begins with a pithy interview with our mutual friend Noam Chomsky from '82, in which he says that for the nation state, my guess is that it will probably destroy human civilization. It is also a great gift for anybody you are gifting. It's multi-layered, evocative, provocative, and the photographs are stunning. So this is 3 very good ones. I didn't have a bad one, okay? I didn't have a bad one. But I'm sure I will. People maybe who don't like it or like it, they will. Oh, I had actually some colleague from Brazil say, why are you doing a thing about the flag of the United States? It's an imperialist country. It's doing this and that. I said, okay, I'm doing it because I have 2 countries. I have the country I was born and the country that I live in, and because it's there. This is it. And Brazil needs more patriotism, actually. Instead of looking at Louis Armstrong, they should look at the man who is a samba composer, who is living in the slum in Brazil, because every country has to, if one country and the other are totally different, it doesn't mean that I cannot talk about this country where I lived most of my life, actually. And it's National Geographic magazine, let's put it that way, You can be an American, you go to Thailand and you write about Thailand, what you observed. And sometimes with a view of a foreigner who came, I came at 29, you see things that call your attention because you arrived. And somebody who wasn't here always saw it and didn't pay attention. But I don't know, it was my personal view.
Well, I think it's awesome, and I read the book about 3 times. I think I really spent some time with it because it is the kind of book where it doesn't take a lot of time to get through it, but it does take time to just sit and look at the pictures and read the quotes and really think about it. It's like you really have to chew that morsel, of what that page is presenting. And I think that every image, just like great art, every image is going to mean something different to different people. So I think that it's really a wonderful book.
And this is what I wanted to do. It's my images, but it's the points of view of different American people,
Yeah.
And so it's a country speaking about itself, let's put it that way, through those icons of patriotism. And I found also a lot of conscience, like somebody who went to a war. That is one of the farmers, old farmers that I interviewed, and he said, there I was, hurt in the floor, and there was next to me a soldier from the opposite side, my enemy, so-called, and we looked at each other's eyes, and we all had the same features. We were human beings, we were suffering, and why was that happening? If that is something that I feel has to be totally minimized, is wars, going to wars. It's so much money and it's so much pollution. I mean, every time you bombard something, everything is destroyed, and so that should be a peace appeal. I think people will get from this book. I hope so.
I think so too. I think there were some really great quotes from different veterans of different wars.
Yes.
That will give some people some things to think about. And we've got a lot of problems we need to fix in this country, but we do have one flag still, and that's...
Have one flag and also have something good.
Yeah.
That's why everybody wants to come. I mean, I was saying my neighborhood up in Andes became like the United Nations, There is a woman from Russia, there is a man from Kosovo. It's not the electrician, it's a good man. There is people who came from Italy, there is people who came from Mexico, and everybody is together trying to make a happy life for their families and for themselves.
And that's all, the pursuit of happiness is all really...
The pursuit of happiness, yes. That's what we hope for,
So we, here at the library, Andes Library, located at 242 Main Street in Andes, New York, in beautiful upstate New York in the Catskills, we have several copies, autographed copies by Beatriz, here for sale that we're having on consignment with her. It's how much is it if they buy it directly from us or from you?
It's $39, because
okay.
we include the taxes in that. It's $39, and if it has to be mailed, it's $3 additional, only within the United States.
All right, and then they can email you at beatrizschillerphotography@gmail.com.
Yes.
And by the time we post this video, your website should be up and online.
Yes.
So they can check that out as well. And Beatriz, I just want to thank you so much for joining us and for sharing this wonderful book, this creation of yours, and so glad to call you one of our local authors. And I wish you the best of luck with it, and let's hope that maybe we reached a few souls today.
And I want to thank Pamela from my heart, for being a new Andes person compared to other Andes people who have been here for generations, to be a part of Andes and to be invited into the library, which is a fantastic place in the city, where you can come for books, for film, for talks like we are having. And she's extremely generous and competent, and I'm very happy to be here, and I thank you enormously.
Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed our interview today, and best of luck with everything. All right, let's
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
I did enjoy it. I did.